to deal in today. Graziano, set the table for me. Let's run the hurry up through some of the news that is out there, beginning with Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson visited the Cleveland Browns yesterday. He has a scheduled visit today with the New York Giants. Russell Wilson looking for a home, and both of those teams looking for veteran quarterback. So we'll see if that leads to Russell Wilson being signed any point soon. Of course, he is waiting to find out what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. The Giants, as well as the Steelers, have been in contact with Aaron Rodgers. They are awaiting his decision on what he wants to do. This could affect what happens with Russell Wilson. Rodgers, we have no idea on the timetable with Rodgers because it is Rodgers and it's all up to him what he wants to do and when. He may be holding out hope that the Vikings' interest becomes serious. Hard to tell, but there have been internal discussions in Minnesota about the possibility. And then wide receiver Cooper Kupp, released by the Rams earlier this week, has drawn a lot of interest from a lot of teams. Adam Schefter reporting just before we came on the air that the Cowboys have shown interest and are a sleeper team to watch. I've also been told to watch Seattle. New England has checked in on Cooper Kupp. So we'll see where Cooper Kupp lands. He could have a decision in the next couple of days, possibly as soon as today.
Okay, so the Cooper Kupp to Dallas thing is getting a little bit spicy, but it is definitely taking second billing for the spice in Big D. Let's go. Former Cowboys defensive end DeMarcus Lawrence, who was the face of that franchise for a period of time, had a lot to say about his former team after walking out the door. He spent 11 seasons there. Now he signs a 3-year, $42 million deal with the Seahawks. And in an interview in Seattle, he did not hold back. Listen.
Dallas is my home. I made my home there. You know, my family lives there. You know, I'm forever going to be there. But, you know, I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah. Yeah. We here.
Okay. So now I'm listening. And so was Micah Parsons. And you know Micah is going to have something to say. He posted, "This is what rejection and envy look like. This some clown stuff." Yeah. Well, Lawrence didn't let that one go unchecked. He responded, "Calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth. Maybe if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left." Oh, this gets interesting. Here we go. Yes, sir. A tea for everyone here this morning. There are so many different places that we can begin this. But let's start with this. My father was a lawyer, and he always used to say, truth is an absolute defense. You cannot be convicted of libel or slander if you can prove that what you said is true. Did DeMarcus Lawrence tell the truth?
Absolutely, and he said the same thing that we've been saying for a long time here. You look at the Dallas Cowboys, and for so long they're focused on everything except winning. I think what DeMarcus Lawrence was saying is, hey, in Seattle, I know one thing. We're chasing a championship, and he feels as though his 11 years, we can all say what we want to say, he was in the building for over a decade. And I think he feels that from Jerry Jones on down, we're trying to grab attention and all of these different things, but we're not focused on the only thing that matters for a football player, and that's chasing a Super Bowl.
What do you think, Bart?
I mean, time is wasted on the young, right? And sometimes I used to always tell the rookies, like, one day you're going to be sitting in this seat and you're going to understand when you have people that's not serious about winning, because we don't have forever to play. So I need you to take my time seriously. And Michael Parsons right now is a young player. But at some point, DeMarcus Lawrence was him. He was a young, gifted, talented player, and he's watched the sand run out of the hourglass, and Micah's going to be here as well. And I think he's echoing what I'm sure other players feel like, man, this dude always got something to say.
Malik Hooker said,
yeah, you're a great player, man, but just shut up sometimes. We don't need your commentary on everything. This is the new athlete that comes in, the branding. And you have to ask yourself, listen, do you think that Michael Parsons is not going to be the loudest voice inside of that locker room? Is this the right type of message you want to send out, that you're a Twitter thug or whatever that is?
So look, there's two separate parts of this.
Yeah.
Micah, yes, we have all been critical of him. I don't really have a problem with him defending his own team,
no.
but I get that part of it. But there are really two separate conversations to be had. There's what DeMarcus Lawrence said initially, and then there's the response involving Micah. Let's deal in the first part first.
Sure.
Dan, we have sat here saying, and by we, I mean me and practically everyone else who comes in here talking about how the Cowboys are about attention. They're not about winning. They're not really, they selectively aggressive and all in and all the different things that they have said. And that has all come from outside the house. I'll never forget Michael Strahan on Fox when they lost in that playoff game 2 years ago, sort of issuing a plea to Jerry Jones when the game was over, saying, please stop treating this like it's a show. Please stop treating your players like they're actors. Please start treating this like it's a football team, like it's a competitive business as opposed to, show business, which we all understand that on some level it is, and that has made Jerry Jones a very rich man. All those things have come from outside the house. Now, I understand DeMarcus Lawrence is now out the door.
Right.
But this feels like the closest it has come, to my knowledge, to coming from inside the house. The recognition that there are people in that building who realize what we're doing here is not really focused on winning.
You feel like you've heard bits and pieces of it, like Dalton Schultz, when he signed with Houston, talked about how the tours that went through and how distracting that could be.
Right.
But to come out and say, I know I was never going to win a Super Bowl there, I mean, that's a different level. So the issue, if you're the Cowboys, is outside perception, right? What kind of, if I'm trying to attract players to my organization over the coming years, is there now this perception that you can't win the Super Bowl if you go to Dallas? They've won a lot of games. They won a lot of games while DeMarcus Lawrence was on their team. But they did not win a lot of playoff games. So is there some sort of structural flaw in their building, in the way they operate, that prevents them, a good team, from becoming a championship team? It's hard to quantify that, and a lot of times postseason success can be kind of, a little bit random. But 30 years without being in the NFC Championship game, it starts to feed a perception that there's something wrong there that prevents it. And for a player, a week after leaving the organization, to come right out and say it just flat out, that is not going to help fight that perception.
The one thing I will say, if I'm in that Cowboys locker room, I'm looking at whether it is Tank Lawrence, whether it is Dalton Schultz. These guys are saying that on their way out. So if you have to find a way to continue to push forward and say, you know what, ignore the noise, they weren't saying that when they were in the building. So if I'm a player on that team and you're looking at Tank Lawrence, and some of this I look at, maybe I just aged out, obviously, from playing, but even personality-wise, at some point you had group chats where you didn't go on Twitter, you didn't go out there in the public, and as a player on that team in that position group, you would hit Tank Lawrence and like, dude, really? Like, if you felt that way, you were the leader here in this locker room, why weren't you saying that while you were here?
It starts at the top with the owner having a radio show. Like, he's setting the tempo and the culture within the building.
But why say it when you leave?
I mean, what can you say? You're not emboldened and empowered. You can't say that to the owner. You don't get your marching papers. you think you can change it perceptually by being able to talk amongst each other. You know how he is. You got the linebackers. You got people sitting in certain parts when you go in the locker room. You got certain people listening to music in the corner. We're having these conversations like, man, we need to get serious about winning, man. Time's run out. We're too good to not be in the NFC Championship. Why are we punching below our weight class? Why aren't we achieving and punching above? Why do a team like Green Bay come here and kick our ass after we supposed to be the favorite? Why are we always falling short? It's because of culture. It got to be, everything in that building has to be about winning. And if it ain't about winning, we need to put it to the side until we start winning, and then we can do the extra stuff.
Exactly, and we will address that immediately. But right now I have a podcast that I have to go record, and I will come back after doing that, and then we're going to get to the winning. And that's what's going on in Dallas. And I understand they're not the only place that the players have a podcast and the players have a platform and all that stuff, and all that is great, but it does not feel, and look, the Cowboys get a disproportionate amount of attention. I understand that. But the reality is there are too many people who are now pointing this out. And I feel like we hear it from legendary former Cowboys now that I sit here thinking about it. I feel like we hear it from Emmett. I feel like we hear it from Troy Aikman. I think that this, candidly, if this doesn't seep inside now, I'm not sure when it's going to.
Those guys, Emmett and Troy Aikman, are of a Cowboys era when there was a butt kicker in the building in Jimmy Johnson, right? So that's there hasn't been since then a Cowboys coach. I mean, Parcells was there for a time, but it was a little bit later on in his career, so that had the ability to say, nonsense. We got to get the nonsense out of here. We got to focus on the winning. And we live in a nonsense-driven era in our world, right? Like, Twitter is optional. No one ever has to tweet at all, period. Like, and Micah Parsons' opinion on everything that occurs in the world does not need to be heard. But unfortunately, the owner has a weekly radio show, which, how are you going to tell the players not to come out and say stuff when he's out there commenting willy-nilly on everything with the team? So it would be very easy to go into Dallas's building if you got a mandate to say, we're going to make it all about football and all about winning. It would be very easy to strip away that other stuff. It's not going to happen, because the Cowboys are not DeMarcus Lawrence, and they're not Micah Parsons, and they're not Dak Prescott, and they're not CeeDee Lamb. They're Jerry Jones. And they're going to be Jerry Jones after those guys are done playing. And he's in charge of how they operate, and this is how it operates. It is show, it is football, and the order in which that is delivered can vary.
And I'm sure DeMarcus looked up and said, hey, we're going in the wrong direction. Now, we got the Super Bowl champions in our division, and we're looking at Washington being all in, and we're not serious about, we're all in last year. What did that mean? We signed nobody. Right? Who are we bringing in? How are we going in that direction? And I'm sure he maybe looked at the head coach hire and saying, are we really serious about going in the right direction? Are we trying to put the best people in the building? Are we trying to go out? It'd be interesting to see if this pushes them forward to sign Cooper Kupp so that they can answer to Lawrence saying, hey, we are serious about winning. And maybe this can spark them within that building to get serious about winning.
And I think for the players in the locker room, like when you hear that and you're thinking, all right, Tank Lawrence, that's one of our guys.
Yeah.
Like one of my best friends. I've played with him for however many years, and he leaves, and that's the first thing he said.
First thing.
I mean, look at the Seattle reporter in the conversation.
He had it
He says
teed
it.
up.
He's like, oh, damn, I didn't know we were going viral. Like, I'm going to be on Get Up tomorrow morning. He had no expectation. This is supposed to be a cool welcome to Seattle. Like, hey, what made the decision? Nice and friendly. And he chose violence in that one moment as soon as he left the building.
He went into that interview planning to say that. Yes.
The way he said it, the response from Lawrence is the more you pay attention to language, because it does matter, the words people choose to use, even if they don't intend to. Calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth. So everyone is going to respond to him saying, maybe if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left, because that's a direct shot at Micah, and we like that sort of thing. We like two-way beef. But calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth is actually the most important part of all of this. Because the reality is, the Cowboys aren't failing because Micah Parsons has a show. They aren't failing because he tweets a lot. They're failing because there are little things around the edges, little things around the margins that they don't do. They're unwilling to do.
Death 5,000 paper cuts.
There was a lot of nonsense in the Philadelphia Eagles building this year. They overcame it.
Right. Because they have extraordinary leadership, and that was trying to push them in another direction. Okay.